Morning, good morning. Excited to introduce my good friend, Mr. Shawn Harris, fellow Bayesian.
Yeah.
And I have to say, the proudest thing I appreciate about you is that your wife is also a mental health professional. But Shawn and my husband go back a long time, and they used to have a business together, suiting professionals in custom clothing. And that has evolved into what my husband now has. So, but Shawn is an amazing, very intelligent man. And I never, I'm always amazed at how intelligent you are, Shawn. And you're so humble with it, like very unassuming in many ways. But Shawn is the co-founder and CEO of CoWorked, an innovative technology company building AI-powered project managers for large global enterprises. He has an MBA from Babson. He continues to mentor in that way. He has worked at many companies where you have known the names. I think we can pop your bio in the chat, but Zebra Technologies, Walmart, Target, TJX, Staples, IBM, the list goes on. But again, very, very intelligent. I love that work that you're doing in AI. And as I find now that I'm catching, I'm like, oh, that's what Sean's doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now it makes sense to me because I've been in part of this learning circle. So I'll turn it over to you, Sean. You can continue to introduce yourself if I've missed
Yeah. No,
anything important.
no, it's all good. Thank you, Charmaine, for inviting me to this learning circle. I'm super excited to have the opportunity to have a conversation, not a lecture, on kind of what I've seen in AI. And yeah, I enjoyed our conversation yesterday, Zena, and I apologize because I'm going to restate uh, some of the things that we talked about yesterday. And if there are things that resonated with you yesterday, Zena, that I forget, please just prompt me and I will see if I can do the recall on that as well. You know, whenever I talk to people about I always try to ground in some hopefully some concepts that we all can hopefully recall in some way. The first one is if you remember y equals mx plus b, right? Y equals mx plus b was where we were seeking to plot a line through a bunch of data on a x and y uh, chart, right? So a bunch of different dots, if you can imagine a bunch of dots on a chart, and this would basically draw a straight line through effectively the center uh, of of the data, right? This allowed for basic regression to get built. This allowed for then you to do some probably high error, but some ability to do things like, okay, if I enter a zip code for a home or something, can it give me a rough range of pricing values, right? Or I enter the number of bedrooms, right? An X value, it would spit out some sort of a Y, right? A prediction. Now, this is AI effectively, right? This is AI. However, the equation changes in a material way, right? It has its calculus with the differential calculus with instead of it being a y value, it's an h theta with x as the input value, and then it predicts almost an unending line of basically weights and biases that basically a fractional value plus some sort of fixed constant that allows now AI, instead of thinking about the world in a straight line, like this linear perspective, that gets to have this multi-dimensional view. And this is where it's able to start to predict things that literally we could never have contained all of the data in our heads and built the interrelationships between those data points to determine that, when, I don't know, it rains for 3 days in a row that I don't know, my dog's gonna bark. I don't know, and I threw a wild one out there, but basically it's that idea that how do we build? We AI is now at a point where We could not we could not even conceive to how it predicts what it predicts, to the point where we feel like it's magic. And indeed, it's not magic, it's math, right? And I think that this is another important grounding is that uh, these models are fixed units. So when they are trained, when they are initially built, you provide uh, data, a lot of data to an algorithm. The algorithm can have multiple variant architectures. We won't get into that, but you provide data to an algorithm. It spits out a model. The model is fixed, right? It's baked at this point. When it comes to like the broad perspective of AI, and AI used to be a more of an umbrella term than it is today. I say umbrella in that it includes a large number of variant algorithms that are learning algorithms. That being they learn based on experience, experience being data. Now AI effectively means large language models, right? Um, but even so, whether it be a classical, I don't know, computer vision model where there's a model that is helping to determine whether or not I'm looking at a dog or a cat or a cow or a bus, or I see Charmaine or Shawn when you're walking into an office building, right, for facial recognition. Those are fixed. Same thing for large language models. When a large language model is created, it is goes through this thing they call pre-training. So it's training, but they call it pre-training because there's multiple phases. The pre-training creates, which is trained, the data input is an incredible, it's the internet at this point for every single large, if you will, lab-based company, OpenAI, Anthropic, the list, Google even, it's, they're training on the internet. Google has more data than I think anyone, but they're training on the internet effectively. So they're all pre-training effectively the same way, throwing in their perspective, their little edges where they can to produce a blob, right? This blob goes through another training. The training that it goes through at that point is called instruct training. This is where they use a method of basically pairings, good pairings, bad pairings. This is going to land on, what is the capital of France, right? And you give it the answer. It's Paris. You give it a bunch of these. And basically this instruct training starts to get the model, the blob, to behave like you experience in ChatGPT. That when you ask a question, it is able to then predict the next word or words that represent the response. Once this is done, this instruct is done and it's put out in the world, and now you have, GPT-4, 5, 6 and 7 and the like are going to be coming. Then it is a fixed unit, right? So when you communicate with it, the model, and this is important grounding, but there's some edges to it. The model in itself is not learning. The model is not, as I said in the beginning, adjusting its weights and biases. It's not adjusting based on your interaction. What is happening is that it is starting to be either that there's a greater, this is AI is not just a model problem, it's a systems problem, right? So there's a greater system in place that is keeping context of the conversation. You undoubtedly, because of how long y'all been running, there's mechanisms called RAG. There's also like, and that's, off outside of the model. There is also just the context window that you're using to create, to create your content. As you're communicating with these models, because the context windows, the amount of data that they're able to contain in the input to the model is growing larger and larger and larger. There are things you don't see that are going into the inquiry that you're making that are historical in nature. So like I was talking to Charmaine about the personal instructions, that is always in your inquiries, even though you don't see it. And so is the history of your chat or elements of it that have been, because of the greater system, pulled out to be a part of the context of the thing you're asking. So it feels like it's learning right? The system, sure, as a whole is learning. The model is not learning. Um, you may have talked about this as well, but there is the case if you don't tell these providers um, not to take what is in context and use it as a part of their next model run, they will do it, right? And so within your settings, specifically within OpenAI and within Claude, there are ways to turn off "Don't learn from my conversation and data." If you're doing sensitive things, I'd encourage you to turn that off. I have not found a way to turn that off in Google. The only way to turn it off in Google is not to have history at all. Within the other platforms, you can turn off this thing of not allowing it to train, but it'll maintain and keep your history. All right. The thing that has been the breakthrough with these large language models, and I think it was in one of the papers that Zena provided, was called "Attention is All You Need." It's from 2017. And basically, this made it such that as these models were trained on an incredible amount of data, um, this algorithm, this approach, basically lends itself to always keeping tabs on what I said before, right? It's autoregressive. So every time it's predicting the next word, it's also like taking in all of everything I said in the past, which just has made it a very powerful capability. Um, Autoregressive, it is producing tokens. You guys probably already gotten into tokens, but effectively a token is a part of a word, right? So if you ever heard the word people talk about tokens, it is true that these LLMs are producing tokens. Tokens can represent a word, can represent a part of a word. In order to like calculate the number of words that you can produce from a given allowed tokens, I think it's something like take the token number, say it's 1024, and divide it by 0.75. In
Sean,
doing that, yep.
just to pause, there's a couple questions that are
Okay.
coming up, so I just want to make sure we get to those questions as well.
Okay.
So should we be choosing the models that have access to the most data or the most relevant data, and how do we decide? That's one question.
Yeah. So all of these models at this point, again, they've been fundamentally trained on the same historic data. So now the question is like, who has the most timely or relevant information? Well, they all have the ability to behind the scenes search the internet. And so there is whether it be the Claude or Opus, better said, or Sonnet models from Anthropic or OpenAI's models, they will search the internet and pull back relevant information from today. Within because of their scale, within whatever they are allowed to do contractually, right at this point, which they have avoided doing any of that in the early days. Um, I guess if I was to make a guess at what is probably the most who has the most comprehensive information, my intuition would be it'd be Google has the most. But I told you about the other side of that, where in terms of it keeping your information, but Google undoubtedly has the relationships, contractual relationships, and the access to have the most breadth of information. Then it can get into just your taste around how it responded, what it said. I don't like how it spoke to me, and that can draw you in different directions. But my intuition would be Google. I don't use it because I'm against the whole platform at this point. Even though I have an account there, I'm against it. But X is going to have certainly a bunch of relevant information with Grok as well. But I'm not supporting that platform. Not to get on
Okay.
that soapbox, and I won't.
So
Um,
there's another question in terms of how valuable is being able to change weights, biases of the models themselves, i.e. learning to fine tune models, work with SLMs from Hugging Face, etc. And how would you get started?
Yeah, so there are a number of platforms where you can do it on OpenAI, you can do it on Hugging Face, you can do it on Fireworks AI, where if you have data that is proprietary in nature, that and you have enough of it, and I say enough of it with fine tuning, You don't need to give it the same amounts of data that were used to do the pre-training. You can go about fine-tuning a model such that your model now has this insight, if you will. It'll become a part of the token predictions. It's not a guaranteed that it will behave as expected. It'll take a lot of, I think, it'll take a lot of trial and error to get it right. But if you have, again, proprietary information, you can undoubtedly do a fine tuning, which is taking a pre-trained, many times, instruct trained model and adding your edge to it. You want to be careful not to overdo it because there can something called model collapse can happen where it actually forgets everything that the beauty of what it had before and only kind of knows what you gave it. And that would happen based on you giving it too much data. So when to do it, when it comes to that point where the models just don't have that intuition, you want it to be more innate to like the model versus using some sort of the context window is not adequate or using some sort of data retrieval mechanism is not going to be adequate for you. I tend to believe that most cases you can get away with using some sort of either the context window or some sort of retrieval method to get to the whatever unique responses that you want to have out of the model.
Would you say there's a number, like in terms of data set wise for fine tuning?
Yeah.
Is there a number that you could throw out, like don't go beyond this many examples or
Man, I wish I had that number for you. I guess I would say, classically you could give it somewhere, I would say in terms of training afterwards, I don't know, giving it somewhere near 100 examples or less,
yeah.
honestly, or less, like 50 to 100 examples of something could be beneficial. Um, but you could go well higher than that. I'm sure there's some literature out there that'll specify for a given model where you need to be careful
Okay.
before you bump into collapse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
There's one last question, and then after this, if people have questions, please feel just raise your hand, and then you can ask your own questions. Some of us have been studying agentic AI. How did you come to build your product? What product? What is it solving, essentially?
Yeah. So I had the experience of working in project management a number of years ago, certainly earlier in my career. I had the opportunity to do a lot of it. So I experienced the whole ideal of, first and foremost, there's a lot of responsibility without authority in that role. And so I got to observe one, just the lift it took. Two, I got to get some degree of the sentiment that was held. I got this from both a corporate lens and I got it from a consulting lens. So I understood like how the businesses thought of the role. I understood what the role was actually like doing it. As me and my co-founders were thinking about areas where we could apply what we know about AI, we actually started by building an orchestration layer for AI, for agents, well before it got sexy, all of it, right? And we started talking to folks about, hey, I had done two things. I had done some work at Walmart back in 2017 that basically centered on, they did this project called WISE, Walmart Intelligent Store Ecosystem, where they had robots in the stores. They had employees carrying around these like mobile computers. They had all sorts of like, if you will, like algorithmic based systems that were making decisions in the store and wanted to think about a way of basically allowing for like shared use of resources. The quick of it, things like if there's a floor cleaning robot and an inventory robot going up and down the aisles, can they share things like point cloud data, which is like the robot's perspective on the environment, right? Imagine basically a bunch of points. I think if you ever saw the movie The Matrix, You could see like how there was representations of the real world in like these odd zeros and ones that kind of looked like they were embedded into people and different things like that. This is what a robot can see. It's their points, what a lot of cars see from a thing called a LiDAR. They wanted to share this data. And so I just, from that experience, just this idea of how to harmonize, if you will, all of the systems so that they can share reusable assets, coupled with, I did some work in supply chain where I just learned about like, they're in a supply chain. It goes from like raw materials to consumption, right? Somebody buying it somewhere, uh, something, some fixed finished product. And along the way, there's all these like players, right? Let's call them nodes in the environment. And each player optimizes on their own execution, right? So person pulling stuff out of a mine to the person refining the goods, the one who's, building a piece part, and then this assembly and ultimately at the retail end. And that they can all optimize on their own. They're all have an objective function to maximize revenue or minimize or maximize profit. And that's great. But when you look at the whole chain from capture to consumption, if you will, or extraction to consumption, it's a suboptimal because they haven't optimized on the whole. If you take all the nodes, all the and all the edges, um, then and you optimize that, you may end up with uh, and this is hopefully helpful in some respects, but you may end up with suboptimality at a given node. So we were thinking initially, like, hey, let's go into the market. We know that there can be an agent that is handling one piece of information that needs to hand it to another agent that ultimately will get to somebody for consumption. This is the same thing as the supply chain, right? And this, by the way, is like adjacent thinking is innovation, right? And always trying to map things in this way. That's why reading is fundamental, right? And so, like, we were like, this is going to happen in this world where you have, I don't know, a finance agent working with a legal agent, working with a marketing agent, and you're going to need orchestration such that you will, at times tell the marketing agent to slow down. You'll tell another one to literally wait days. You'll tell another one to prioritize some bit of work ahead of some other thing, such that in the net for an enterprise, you have optimality. So we're going in with orchestration, pitch this to a bunch of large companies. I've had a lot of relationships with large enterprises, and they were like, whatever the hell you're talking about, Shawn, makes no sense to me. But let me tell you about a real problem I have. And so I gave you all that background just so it could hopefully be feeder for other things in your life. But they said, I don't know what the hell you're doing, but let me tell you about a problem I have. It was a problem of project management. So then based on my prior experience, it started to connect with me. It was a very narrow scheduling based issue where there was just a lot of different competing desires to make change in one physical location. And how do you do it in a way that doesn't affect operations in that physical location? Um, and from that alone, and certainly my understanding of where things were going, I said, let's build the whole skill set, the whole job. And so now that's what we've done. We've created a technology that we've named Harmony. Harmony is an agentic project manager. AI project manager. It is made up of somewhere approaching maybe a little bit over 200 internal agents. Where we are orchestrating the behavior as behind the input in the entity Harmony, right? Harmony is instantiated in enterprise environments by provisioning a Microsoft 365 account. It gets its own email, has then calendaring, access to SharePoint. We built a capability where you can communicate with it in Teams. We're working on a voice capability. Our intention is that it feels like a remote employee, and a remote employee that can do a breadth of the work of a project manager, from planning to driving execution, closed loop follow up, produces any of the artifacts that a PM would produce, does all the stakeholder follow ups, schedules meetings, like literally those things that to start, you would say a project coordinator does within large enterprises. But we have defined some 400 individual discrete job tasks that we are progressively building out into the platform, building on top of those 200 agents, which goes back to my statement earlier in the conversation about scope. The 200 is because you got to be thoughtful about scope. And yeah, that's a long-winded response to your inquiry.
That's really helpful because it provides the context as to why we have learning circles, because it's a lot. So I'm hearing you talk about seeing the problem, understanding the problem, solving it, and then making the thing to solve it, and then managing all the pieces, and then having to sustain your well-being as an entrepreneur as you try to figure all this out. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
one of
So we
those
are funded.
videos.
Yeah, yeah. So I've gone through and it literally is a pain. I've gone through the pain of raising money. So we raised a little bit of money to do this. We're venture backed,
What's a
which
little bit? Come on now, be honest. What's a little
about
bit?
2 million. It's a little bit, still about $2 million at this point. So it's pre-seed, so it's early for us, and I think $2 million pre-seed is good. And we have super large companies and semiconductor companies. We have a pharma company out of the UK that is at the edge of closing. Like we're working on the MSA with them, and a number of others that we're engaged with. And so, but no, fundraising is brutal. Fundraising is brutal. I've spoken to well over close to probably there to 200 investors, and we can that's a whole nother conversation. So to come back to come back to this stuff, because I know if you guys have a hard stop, I want to kind of get as much as I can out of
And I
here.
know Masai has a
Yeah.
question too, and
Oh, go
Angela.
ahead. Go for it.
Yeah, my question is around the tech stack when you guys are building the agents. Like
Yep.
what sort of frameworks are you guys using?
Yep.
What's the stack like to build and deploy this stuff in
Yep.
enterprise?
Yep. Early on, we built our own agent framework.
Okay.
And so first we were trying to use something called Crew AI
Yep, of
to
course.
do it.
Yep.
And it was early, but what we realized was it just couldn't deal with managing context well. I think still a lot of these things struggle with managing context. The sheer number of agents that we started to build out to to um, to create harmony were becoming very difficult to manage under that platform. Also, because it was early, as they were making updates, it was just breaking what we were building. So we ended up building our own agent framework.
Is it
Uh,
a
an agent framework that actually has allowed us to not have hallucinations affect us because of the way that we've created it, which is like an awesome thing. It manages context extremely well. We have a multi-tiered memory system, which we're constantly improving, but certainly there's like the immediate kind of in context stuff. We have a vector database for RAG, and then we have a cold storage, if you will, for retrieval in Mongo
yep,
as well that we can pull on. Um,
Is it a Python framework?
Say again?
The framework a Python framework or what you guys
Python.
Python? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then I just want to ask really quick about because I
Yeah.
don't have to jump at 10. Do you see this? Is this a direction that the business model goes where you're looking at these bigger companies and figuring out what roles basically you can essentially look to replace or augment with AI? Is it more like AI fulfilling a service for businesses? Is that sort of the way you think it's going instead of traditional SaaS?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I think that for us, we're only focused on one job, right? We're focused on and I think it's the right one. We're focused on this job role that no one cares about, that is actually core to transformation and enterprise change, right? Uh, but yeah, I think when I think about why are people so excited about AI, it's because there's some derogatory ways I've thought about this, but like you are effectively going to a world where you can bring labor costs asymptotic to zero,
Yeah.
right? And I always say to like even white folks, I always say to them like, when was the last time like labor was at zero and what happened? Right? The world was built
Yeah.
on the back of zero cost labor,
Yeah.
right? And I think the excitement that is unspoken is that AI ultimately will be zero cost labor again.
Yeah.
And what will that allow? Um, and so, yeah, it's like anything in life, right? It's not perfect at this point in time, but the models are improving and the systems around those models, people are getting smarter around how to control them and how to direct them. The biggest issue is going to be centered around this thing I mentioned earlier about taste, judgment, right? That these as you're introducing these technologies, right? The change management of people getting away from deterministic results to a probabilistic or range of acceptable results. The same thing they deal with as you're engaging with a human, you're accepting a range of acceptable information from that human, right? Unless you're in finance, there's some your work product's going to have deterministic values within there, or
Yeah.
But for the most part, if you're in most job roles, it's like, yeah, I like that report you gave me, great, and so there's that adjustment that's going to happen. Probably going to be the long tail of it all is going to be the human adjustment and less a technical problem with the goal of getting after uh, just about zero cost labor.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I'm gonna reach out to you on LinkedIn. I have to drop for
Please
a quick
do.
part. All right, thanks so much.
We've had a few people that said they're happy to stay on for 10 minutes afterwards if you have time, Shawn, for 10
Yeah,
minutes.
I make it quick. I definitely I have a guy who's waiting for me, but I'm gonna make a couple things quick. Because like the
Great.
next where these things going
Uh,
next. Oh, good
Great.
question.
So Angela has a
Angela,
question
go
for
for
you.
it.
Yeah. So it's really quick because it's funny you just talked about zero cost labor because so I just feel like your Harmony thing is replacing the project manager. And so my question was, have you had it take the PMP exam?
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I think when we did this like early on, it passed the PMP over and over and over. Like at least the sample tests that were out there in the
Right,
world
right,
passed it. But that's just like that's not intelligence. That's retrieval,
right,
right? That's
right.
so it can it retrieve the information? Sure. Most of this is that. There's definitely some great work happening with math such that it is having to do it's still all, when it's all said and done, you're building a system that is built to deliver some sort of output, some specific results. So, yeah, I was able to do that 2 years ago, you know. So, yeah, you can, by the way, on our website, I think Zena, you did this, right? Like you can go and interview Harmony, have a conversation with it. It is imbued. That aspect of it is decoupled from the thing that's containing all the sensitive enterprise data, but it is imbued with Harmony's knowledge, and you'll get an opportunity to ask it anything about what it can do, how it does it, and it will answer you in a voice conversation. Um, before I jump here, I just wanted to say, like, what's next with AI is definitely going to be what people are calling like physical AI. Also, like this idea of causal as well. So right now, a lot of what's happening is around like a probabilistic based, like a predictive, like, okay, I think based on what I'm seeing here, the next answer with the highest probability of being right is X. But like that is a discrete value that we're moving to a world where we need to have more of a continuous understanding of the world. Certainly for like robotics, even autonomous cars and the like, you're going to need it to really be grounded in what the physical world is and in grounding in the physical world. It will allow for the faster adaptation to that world, to this world that we live in. And so I think you're going to hear a lot about world models, physical AI, causal, right? So instead of it being like the classic, the probability of B given A, the pipe A, it's going to be something like probability of B do A, right? So A has been done because A is done. What is the probability of the prior? It's a more of a uh, true directive impact on things as well. Yeah, like hit me up on LinkedIn. And I'll put my LinkedIn into the
So as you do that, I just want to say thank you so much, Shawn. I'm
yeah,
going
no
to
problem.
share this and share a transcript with the uh, circle. But it's going to be one of those recordings that I'm going to have to watch over and over again
Yeah,
because there's so many nuggets.
Yeah, and I don't have to disappear, but so I can swing back and just sit in the group and stuff as well if invite me, Charmaine, and
Beautiful.
maybe
Okay.
jump into the group every now and then. But yeah, I'm literally living this stuff at some large companies. It's not always pretty, but it's definitely like it feeds my curiosity. It's super fascinating. So yeah, thank you.